His last request before execution was to see the Virgin Mary. What happened next will shock you. The room was cold and white. The floor shined like ice. Michael Carter stood in chains under a bright light that hurt his eyes. The clock on the wall ticked so loud it sounded like a hammer. The guards were quiet. The doctor checked his watch. The warden folded his hands and tried not to look at Michael's face. "Any last request?" the warden asked, like he was reading a line from a book. Michael lifted his head. His voice was rough but steady. "I want to see the Virgin Mary." A few people in the witness room gasped. One of the guards blinked hard. The chaplain pressed his lips together like he wanted to smile and cry at the same time. That's not possible," the warden said. He sounded tired. He had heard strange last requests before. A cheeseburger from a faraway diner. A song that no one could find. A dog from childhood. He had never heard this one. Michael closed his eyes. "Then let me see her picture," he said. "Or her statue. Or her shadow. Or even a blue scarf that smells like roses. I just need to see her before I go." The doctor cleared his throat. "We don't have." But then the lights flickered once. Just once. The room grew soft and quiet, like someone turned down the world. A smell drifted in, sweet and warm, like a garden after rain. It didn't fit the cold room. It didn't fit the hard floor. It didn't fit the metal straps on Michael's wrists. A blue glow slid across the glass of the witness room. People pressed their hands to the glass and leaned forward. They were not sure what they were seeing. One of the guards whispered, "Do you smell that? Roses?" His eyes were big now. Michael opened his eyes. He stared past the warden, past the clock, past the doctor's careful face. He was not looking at the machines. He was not looking at the straps. He was looking at something else. Someone else. "She's here," Michael said, so soft it sounded like a prayer. The straps on his wrists clicked, like someone had touched the buckles with gentle fingers. And then, from the back doorway that was supposed to be locked, a shape moved. A small shape. An old woman in a simple gray coat stepped in, her scarf the color of the clear sky right after a storm. The blue cloth caught the light. She did not look afraid. She did not look proud. She looked like somebody's grandmother walking into a grocery store. But the air around her felt like a song. The warden shouted, "Who let her in?" The guard reached for his radio. The doctor stepped back. The chaplain lowered his head, as if he already knew her. The old woman lifted her eyes to Michael. "You asked for me," she said. Her voice was steady, bright, and kind. "Here I am." The clock stopped ticking. Everything stopped. "And that is where I will leave you for a second. Right here, where a man in chains gets the one last request no one thought could happen, and everyone in the room is about to learn something they will never forget. Now let me tell you how we got here. It started in a little town called Maple Ridge, where the river bent like an elbow and the old bridge groaned when trucks rolled across it. People there said hello when they passed each other. They bought lemonade from kids in summer. They cleared snow from each other's driveways in winter. Some people had big houses. Some people had small ones. Most people had a porch chair that squeaked. Michael grew up in a small house with a lawn that was never quite smooth. He was not a loud boy. He liked to fix things. He could make a broken fan spin again with a bent paper clip and a hopeful look. He could make a stuck window open with a butter knife and patience. His mother, Abby, called him my steady boy. She worked at the hospital as a cleaner and came home smelling like pine soap and warm food. Michael did not have a father around. He had a job at the auto shop after school. He liked the way engines hummed when he set them right. He saved his money in a coffee can behind a loose board in his closet. He was saving for a little truck, the kind that had rust on the doors and a radio that worked only if you tapped it. On a fall afternoon, when leaves skittered across the road like red hands, Michael sat outside Donnie's diner eating a burger. He ate slow because he liked to make good things last. A bus pulled up and hissed. People stepped off and went on their way. One old woman stayed by the bus stop. She wore a gray coat with a missing button and carried a grocery bag with only 2 apples inside. She looked around like she was trying to find a street sign, but the wind lifted her scarf and tugged it away. It skated across the road and stuck to a stop sign. Michael stood up. He did not think much about it. He jogged across the street, dodged a pickup, and peeled the scarf from the sign. It was soft and blue, bright as the sky in June. It smelled like roses, but not the fancy kind in flower shops. The kind that grew along old fences where kids tied strings and told secrets. He brought the scarf back. "Ma'am," he said, handing it to her. The old woman smiled. Her front tooth was a little crooked. Thank you, dear. No problem, Michael said. He started to sit down. Wait, she said. She tied the scarf back around her neck with slow hands. Sit with me a minute. He sat. The wind felt gentle now, like it had been scolded. The old woman took one of the apples out of her bag and set it on the bench between them, like a small red sun. My name is Nora, she said. Nora Blake. I'm Michael, he said. He wiped his hands on his jeans. Do you need help finding something? I need to find people who remember simple goodness, she said. The kind you just did. She looked at him with eyes that were bright and soft, the way a lake looks in the morning when the mist is lifting. Do you know the story of the Virgin Mary? Michael nodded. His mom prayed sometimes, not out loud, but with her hands still and her eyes far away. They had a small picture on a shelf near the kitchen. A lady in blue with her head bowed and her arms open. She is a mother, Nora said. She sees people when others look away. She hears people when their mouths don't even move. When you returned my scarf, you didn't just help me. You honored what she stands for, kindness that cost you something. You crossed a street. You risked a truck. It was small, but it was real. Michael shrugged. It was just a scarf. That's how the world gets healed, Nora said. One just a scarf at a time. He smiled. Do you live here, Ms. Nora? I live where I'm sent, she said. She patted his hand. And today I was sent to remind you. Never harden your heart. Even when the world is unfair. Even when people say you're guilty of something you didn't do, or even when you did it, but you've learned better since. Mercy is a door that opens both ways. The words felt strange and warm at the same time, like stepping into a house where the oven is on and pie is baking. Michael nodded again, unsure what to say. He did not know that in a few months, he would hold on to those words like a rope over a cliff. A week later, trouble blew into Maple Ridge like a storm that no one saw on the news. Someone robbed the Quick Mart on River Street in the dark part of evening. The clerk, Mr. Patel, was scared but safe. The robber ran, cutting through the alley where the auto shop tossed its cardboard. A man across the street said he saw a tall figure with a hoodie and boots like Michael's run past the tire stack. By midnight, the police knocked on Michael's door. They were polite. They were firm. Michael had grease on his hands because he had been fixing a neighbor's mower. The coffee can in his closet still had money in it, but not much. The little money looked like a lot to people who wanted a quick answer. Down at the station, Michael told them the truth. He had been at the shop. He had walked home. He had watched a show with his mom and fallen asleep on the couch with a blanket that smelled like laundry. But one camera near the alley showed a blurry shape that could have been anybody. One witness said, I'm pretty sure. No one asked, pretty sure of what? The story rolled forward like a heavy truck on a hill, and even if you stood in front of it and waved, it kept moving. The town split into two big groups. People who knew Michael said, that boy? No way. People who didn't said, someone has to pay. The court date came fast. His public defender did his best. But the story of the robber with the hoodie was easier to hear than the story of the boy who fixed fans with paper clips. The judge wore glasses that hid his eyes. The jury didn't look at Michael much. When the word guilty dropped into the courtroom, it hit the floor like a pan clattering in a quiet kitchen. Michael's mom made a sound like air leaving a balloon. The old woman, Nora, sat in the back. She stood up with everyone else, but she did not leave right away. She watched Michael as the bailiff took him by the arm. He looked back at her. She pressed her hand to her blue scarf as if swearing a promise. Life on the row was not shouting and metal and fights like in movies. It was mostly waiting. Waiting for food. Waiting for letters. Waiting for sleep. Waiting for the next day to be a little different. Michael learned the sounds of keys from different guards. He learned the feel of time, how it stretched and shrank, how it could be a blanket or a rope. The chaplain came often. His name was Father Tom. He did not push. He sat and listened. He brought small books. He brought stories of saints who loved hard people and hard places until those places softened. He taped a picture on Michael's wall, a lady in blue with her head bowed and her hands open. It looked like the picture from his mom's shelf, but brighter. Do you ever ask for anything? Father Tom asked one afternoon. I don't ask for much, Michael said. Try, Father Tom said. Ask for love to show up where you can see it. Michael looked at the picture and tried. It felt silly at first, like talking to a painting. But then it felt like talking to air that listened. Please, he said. He didn't say more. He didn't have more words. Letters came from strange places. A lady in Ohio wrote, I don't know you, but I pray you feel peace today. A boy in Texas wrote in messy pencil. My grandpa said no one is a throwaway. I think so too. His mom sent a drawing she made at the hospital on her break, 2 hands holding a little light. Sometimes, during the slow afternoons, a smell of roses drifted through the vent, soft and sweet. It came and went without reason. Michael would close his eyes and breathe it in. The guard on the round, Officer Daniels, wrinkled his nose one time and said, "You smell that?" Michael nodded. Officer Daniels cleared his throat. "My grandma grew roses," he said. "Haven't smelled that in years." He walked away fast, like the smell scared him a little. One day, 3 months before the date circled on the calendar, a visitor came. The logbook said Ann Blake. She walked in with her gray coat and her blue scarf, the same one Michael had chased across the street. The same scarf she had pressed with a promise in the courtroom. "You again," Michael said, and his voice broke into a smile he had not felt in weeks. "Me again," she said. She sat down and set a paper bag on the table between them. Inside was a sandwich wrapped in wax paper and a small bottle of apple juice. The guard looked at the bag and raised an eyebrow. Nora looked right back with warm eyes that somehow made people stop arguing. The guard shrugged. "I'll check it," he said softly, and he did, and it was fine. They ate in slow bites, as if time would wait if they chewed gently. "Do you believe you are loved?" Nora asked. Michael swallowed. "Some days. Believe it on the other days, too," she said. "Believe it even if no one else does." Are you a nun or something?" he asked. Nora laughed. "I'm a woman who knows a mother's love when she smells it. I follow it where it goes." "Smells it?" "Roses," she said, and her eyes twinkled. "Do you smell them here?" "Sometimes," he said. "Good," she said. "That means you're not alone." The weeks crawled. His appeals failed like paper boats in rain. On the night before the date, Michael couldn't sleep. He lay on his back and stared at the ceiling. He whispered to the blue-clad lady in the picture, "I'm scared." He said it again. "I'm scared." It felt like telling the truth to someone who wouldn't use it against him. He thought about the Quick Mart. He thought about the blurry camera. He thought about the man across the street who said he was pretty sure. He thought about the sound his mom made when the pan of the verdict hit the floor of her heart. He thought about Nora's scarf and the smell of roses in air vents that should have only smelled like bleach. Morning came like a slow door opening. The sky outside the small window was the pale color of milk. Officer Daniels came with breakfast. He set the tray down and stood there a second too long. "You need anything?" he asked. It sounded like he wanted to bring a whole world on a paper plate. "I need you to tell my mom." Michael started, then stopped. Words felt like broken shoes. They didn't fit right. "Tell her I kept my heart soft," he said at last. "Tell her I didn't turn mean." Officer Daniels nodded. He looked down. He was not good at hiding when his eyes got wet. "I'll tell her," he said. They walked the long hall. The warden met them at the door. He had a face people trusted when things were normal. He didn't look at Michael like a monster. He looked at him like a man trying to hold a heavy box with both hands. "Any last requests?" the warden asked, even though he already knew he had to ask it. "I want to see the Virgin Mary," Michael said. That is when the lights flickered. That is when the smell of roses came, big and sure, like a parade turning a corner. That is when the old woman in the gray coat slipped through a door that should not have opened and walked forward with her blue scarf catching the light. That is when the clock forgot how to tick and the straps forgot how to hold. People who had stood tall when other people cried sat down. People who had never believed in anything but themselves reached into their pockets for the small prayers they hid there as kids. The doctor, who was careful and exact, took a half step back and pressed his hand to his chest like his heart had just remembered a song. The old woman stopped one step from Michael. She looked up at him with eyes that made the hard room feel like a kitchen where bread was baking. "You asked for me," she said in her steady, bright voice. "Here I am." The warden started to speak, but his mouth felt dry. The chaplain whispered, "Hail Mary," and then could not find the next words because his throat had a lump the size of a fist. Officer Daniels grabbed the radio at his shoulder and then just held it like he was afraid to break the moment with a crackle. Michael's chains gave a small, soft click, as if someone gentle had been working at them from the inside with a key made of light. And then, like a wave that rises high and does not fall yet, the picture on the far wall, the one of the lady in blue with her head bowed and her hands open, began to glisten. A single clear tear slid down the glass, slow and shining, and fell onto the white tile with a sound like a bell. The tear hit. The room gasped. The door at the back blew inward as if pushed by a wind no one could feel, and something bright stepped through, so bright that every face lifted and every doubt shivered. And that is where this chapter ends, with the bright figure crossing the line between the seen and the unseen, with chains forgetting their job, with the smell of roses filling a room that never held flowers, and with a whole town, maybe a whole world, about to learn what mercy looks like when it walks in wearing a simple scarf the color of a summer sky. The light was too bright to look at, yet no one turned away. It didn't hurt their eyes, it soothed them, like sunlight after days of storm. The old woman's scarf fluttered softly, as though a breeze had entered only for her. The smell of roses deepened, not fake perfume roses, but living ones, wet, real, ancient. Michael's mouth fell open. He wasn't breathing. He wasn't thinking. He was only feeling, something clean, warm, and heavy pressing down on his chest like peace with a heartbeat. The bright figure took one more step forward. The chains on his wrists slid to the ground with a clink. Every eye in the room was wide. The warden froze mid-breath. The doctor whispered, "Dear God." The old woman, or whoever she was, lifted her hands slowly, palms open, glowing faintly, as though holding invisible candles. "Do not be afraid," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It was soft, but it filled every corner of the room, and every person heard it in their own way. The warden heard his mother's lullaby. Officer Daniels heard the sound of his grandmother's prayer. Father Tom heard a hymn he hadn't sung in 20 years. Michael's knees weakened. His eyes burned with tears he hadn't cried since he was a boy. He whispered, "Am I dreaming?" The woman smiled. "No. You asked for mercy, and mercy has answered." The blue scarf shimmered. The glow softened. The sound of the clock returned. Time began again, but slower, gentler. "Michael," she said. He swallowed hard. "Yes." "Do you believe you are forgiven?" He wanted to say yes, but guilt was a stubborn shadow. It clung even when the sun was shining. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I don't know if I deserve it." Her smile didn't fade. Forgiveness is not earned. It's accepted. The words sank deep, not into his ears, but into his heart, where they landed and began to grow. Then, as quickly as the moment had come, it began to fade. The light dimmed, the warmth thinned, and the room returned to its cold white stillness. Only the faint smell of roses lingered, floating like a memory. The warden stumbled back, gasping. "Who? Who was that woman?" he asked, but no one answered. When he turned, she was gone. The back door, the same one she'd entered through, was shut tight. Only Michael still felt her presence. A strange calm settled over him, the kind people get when they finally stop running inside their own head. But calm didn't last long. The guards were shouting now, confused. "Check the back hall." No one came through. How did she get in? Radios crackled. Footsteps rushed down corridors. Someone tripped. Someone swore. The warden turned to Michael. "What did you see?" Michael looked up. "I saw her." "Who?" "The Virgin Mary," he said simply. The warden stared at him, his lips parting. He didn't know what to do with that. He was a man of rules and reports, not miracles and mysteries. "Mr. Carter," the doctor said quietly, "do you realize what you're saying?" Michael nodded. "Yes." The warden rubbed his temple. "Suspend everything," he said to the guards. "We'll halt the procedure until we figure out what just happened." As they escorted Michael back to his cell, the air in the hallway felt strange. Even the flickering bulbs seemed softer, like they, too, had seen something holy. Inside his cell, Michael sat on the cot, head bowed, hands trembling. The chain marks on his wrists were gone. Smooth skin, no red lines. He stared, blinking, unable to believe it. He closed his eyes. He didn't pray exactly. He just whispered, "Thank you." And somewhere, far away or maybe very close, the faintest sound of a woman's voice answered, "Remember kindness, Michael. Remember mercy." 2 days later, the prison was chaos. News had spread faster than wildfire. Guards who never spoke to each other were whispering in corners. The warden had ordered silence, but no one could keep a miracle secret. Reporters camped outside. Church leaders sent letters. One claimed it was divine intervention. Another said it was madness. Father Tom visited Michael again. His hands were shaking when he set down his Bible. "They're saying things, Michael. Some say it was an angel. Some say you imagined it. What do you say? Michael smiled faintly. I say she smelled like roses. Father Tom laughed softly through his tears. That's all. That's enough. He nodded. Then, lowering his voice, he added, the warden is asking questions. He wants to know if you've seen the old woman before. I told him no one can find her name on any visitor list. Michael looked up slowly. Nora Blake. What? That's her name, he said. She told me once. Father Tom frowned. We checked. There's no record of anyone by that name in the system. No ID. No address. She's real, Michael said. I met her before all this. She told me never to harden my heart. Father Tom leaned forward. Where? In town. Before it all happened. He told the story, about the scarf, the bench, the apples, the kindness. When he finished, Father Tom was silent for a long time. Do you believe she was sent? Michael looked at his hands again. I don't know what she was. I just know she's the only person who ever looked at me like she already knew everything bad I did, and still smiled. That night, something strange happened. Officer Daniels, who was on the night shift, was walking his rounds when he noticed something under Michael's door. A small folded paper. He bent down, picked it up, and read the words written in neat handwriting. Mercy comes to those who show it. No one knew how it got there. Daniels looked through the small window into Michael's cell. The man was asleep, peaceful as if resting at home. The picture of the Virgin Mary on the wall glowed faintly again, just for a moment, and then dimmed. Daniels didn't tell anyone about the note. He slipped it into his pocket and went on with his shift, though his hands were trembling. The next morning, something even stranger happened. The man who had testified against Michael, the one who said he was pretty sure, walked into the police station himself. His name was Ryan Jacobs. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he held his hat. I need to talk, he said. I lied. The officer at the desk frowned. Excuse me. I lied about seeing Michael Carter that night. It wasn't him. The station fell silent. The chief looked up from his desk, blinking. Mr. Jacobs, are you saying you gave false testimony under oath? Yes, Ryan said. And I can't live with it anymore. He wiped his eyes. That night, I was drunk. I thought it was him, but it wasn't. I saw the man who really did it 2 days ago. Same jacket, same boots, at the pawn shop. His name's Tony Reeves. Check the cameras if you don't believe me. The chief stared, speechless. Why now? Why come forward now? Ryan swallowed hard. Because last night, she came to me. The chief frowned. Who? Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper. The Virgin Mary. Or someone who looked like her. She told me. You must fix what your fear broke. The room fell silent. By evening, the police had checked the pawn shop's cameras. They saw Tony Reeves, tall, same build, same boots, selling a silver chain and watch stolen from the Quick Mart's clerk. They arrested him before sunrise. And just like that, the story that had been sealed and signed with guilt began to crack open. Back in his cell, Michael sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the blue sky through the small window. The air smelled faintly of roses again. Officer Daniels walked up quietly. They're reopening your case, he said softly. The man who blamed you confessed. Michael blinked. What? Daniels nodded. You might be going home, kid. Michael's throat tightened. He pressed a hand to his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the weight of iron or shame, just the strange, impossible lightness of hope. He closed his eyes. Thank you, he whispered again. And from somewhere unseen, faint but clear, a woman's voice answered once more. Mercy opens doors men thought were locked forever. The bulb above him flickered once, just like it had the first time she came. And that's when everything changed again, because as Michael waited for freedom, another strange message arrived at the prison, one that would turn everything upside down all over again. The letter came at sunrise. The guard on duty, a quiet man named Lewis, found it wedged under the main gate of the prison. No stamps, no name, just a folded piece of thick, cream-colored paper that smelled faintly of roses. He almost threw it away, thinking it was junk. But something about the smell made him pause. He opened it carefully. Inside, written in neat, flowing handwriting, were just 5 words. He must not leave yet. Lewis frowned. He turned the letter over. No signature, no address, no clue. He walked it straight to the warden's office. The warden, who hadn't slept properly since that night in the execution room, rubbed his temples as he read it. Who gave you this? No one, sir. It was just there by the gate. The warden leaned back in his chair. The smell of roses filled the room again. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Get Father Tom," he said quietly, "and call Officer Daniels." Now, inside his cell, Michael was kneeling by the bed, whispering something softly under his breath. It wasn't quite a prayer. It was more like a conversation with someone who wasn't there, but maybe was. He didn't see Father Tom until the chaplain's shadow stretched across the floor. "They're reopening your case officially," Father Tom said, forcing a smile. "You might be a free man soon." Michael smiled weakly. "I heard. Daniels told me." Father Tom nodded, then hesitated. "There's something else. The warden got a letter this morning." Michael looked up. "From who?" Father Tom shook his head. "No one knows. It said he must not leave yet." Michael frowned. "Not leave?" "Yes. We don't know what it means." But the warden looked troubled. Michael sat back slowly, the smile fading. "Maybe it means there's still something left for me to do." Father Tom raised an eyebrow. "You think so?" "I don't know why she came that night," Michael said softly. "Maybe it wasn't just to save me. Maybe it was to teach someone else something." The chaplain studied him for a long moment. "You sound like a man who's already made peace." Michael smiled faintly. "I have. But peace doesn't mean finished." That same morning, across town, Ryan Jacobs, the man who had confessed to lying, was sitting in his kitchen with a mug of untouched coffee. He looked pale, shaken. His wife, Laura, stood by the counter, watching him. "You did the right thing," she said gently. "I thought so too," he whispered. "But last night," he rubbed his eyes, his voice trembling. "I saw her again. The woman in blue." Laura froze. "Ryan, please. Don't say that." "She was standing by the doorway," he said. "She didn't speak this time. She just looked sad, like something bad was still coming." Laura set down her mug. "Maybe it's your guilt." He shook his head. "No, this was different." Outside, a car horn blared. The sudden sound made him flinch so hard he dropped his cup. It shattered on the floor. Then, as if on cue, the phone rang. Ryan answered. His face went blank as he listened. "What? When?" His voice dropped. "No, no, that can't be." He hung up slowly. Laura touched his arm. "What happened?" He swallowed. "Tony Reeves, the real robber. He's dead." Laura's mouth fell open. "Dead? How?" "Heart attack," Ryan whispered. "In his cell. This morning." The smell of roses drifted faintly through the open kitchen window. Back at the prison, the warden's phone rang at the same moment. The voice on the other end confirmed it. The man who'd confessed, the true culprit, was gone. The warden sank into his chair. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "The case is still open, and now our only evidence is gone." He turned to Father Tom and Officer Daniels, who had just arrived. "Tell me this, Father, what if that woman knew? What if she meant for this to happen?" Father Tom crossed his arms. "You think she predicted his death?" "I think," the warden said slowly, "that she's not finished with us yet." That evening, as the sky turned purple behind the razor wire, Michael sat in his cell, listening to the faint buzz of the lights. He felt a chill crawl up his arms, not cold, but heavy, like something unseen had just entered the room. Then he smelled it again. Roses. He stood up, heart pounding. "Are you here?" he whispered. No answer. Just silence. He turned, and there she was. Not the old woman this time. The light was softer now, almost human. She looked younger, her face calm, her eyes gentle, her hands folded in front of her. "Why did you save me?" he asked. Her voice floated, like wind through glass. "Because you listened. Listened. You didn't harden your heart. You helped, even when no one saw. That kind of kindness lights paths for others, even for those who've lost their way." Michael's throat tightened. "Then why did you say I must not leave yet?" She smiled sadly. "Because mercy doesn't end when you're free. It begins when you forgive." "Forgive who?" "Everyone," she said softly. "Even the ones who wronged you. Even the ones who will never say sorry." Michael looked down. "That's not easy." "It's never easy," she said. "But that's what makes it holy." She reached out, her fingers brushing the air, and for a moment, he felt warmth rush through his chest, like sunlight breaking through a storm. When he opened his eyes again, she was gone. But in her place, lying on his bed, was a single white rose. The next morning, the warden came to his cell. "Michael," he said, his voice low, "there's been another development. The court is delaying your release." Michael nodded slowly, as if he'd expected it. They said they need time to review the new evidence since the main suspect died. The warden continued. It could take weeks, maybe months. Michael looked calm. That's okay. The warden frowned. You're not angry? No, he said. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The warden stared at him like he'd just spoken in another language. Sir, Michael added quietly, you ever wonder why she came that night? The warden hesitated. Every day. Michael's eyes softened. Maybe she came for you, too. The warden's lips parted, but he couldn't find words. He turned quickly and walked out. As the door closed, the faint scent of roses followed him down the hallway. Later that night, Officer Daniels was making his usual rounds when he saw a flicker of light under Michael's cell door. Thinking the man had somehow gotten hold of a lighter or candle, he rushed to open it. But when he stepped inside, the light wasn't coming from any flame. It was coming from the picture of the Virgin Mary on the wall, glowing again, brighter than before. And this time, her eyes weren't looking down. They were looking straight at him. Daniels froze. His heart hammered. He took one slow step back, but he couldn't look away. Then, suddenly, the light flickered and faded, leaving only the faint smell of roses behind. He stood there shaking, staring at the picture, until Michael's voice broke the silence. She wanted you to see her, Michael said softly from the bed. Daniels turned. Why me? Because you still don't believe, Michael said. And then, from somewhere deep within the prison, a scream echoed down the hall. A man's scream. Sharp. Terrified. Daniel's radio crackled to life. Medical emergency. In cell block C. Repeat. Medical emergency. He ran out the door, leaving Michael sitting quietly, staring at the picture that still glimmered faintly in the dark. When Daniels reached cell block C, a crowd had already gathered. A young inmate was on the ground, shaking, his eyes rolled back. 2 guards were kneeling beside him. He said someone was in his cell. One guard said breathlessly. An old woman in blue. Daniel's blood ran cold. What? The guard nodded. He said she told him to confess. Confess to what? Daniels asked. The guard swallowed. To what he did in Maple Ridge, the night of the Quick Mart robbery. Daniels froze. That's impossible. Tony Reeves already confessed. The guard's voice dropped to a whisper. Then maybe she found the wrong man first. And at that moment, somewhere deep in his heart, Daniels knew the story wasn't over. Not for Michael. Not for Maple Ridge. Not for anyone who had ever lied, doubted, or turned away from mercy. Because the woman in blue was still walking, still searching, still teaching. And her next visit would change everything again. That night, the prison didn't sleep. Every hallway felt heavier. The lights buzzed louder. The guards whispered to each other like kids trading ghost stories they didn't want to believe. The warden walked the corridors alone, his shoes echoing against the concrete. He wasn't a superstitious man, or at least he hadn't been. But ever since that night in the execution room, logic no longer seemed enough to explain what was happening. He paused at the corner where the cameras met. One of them flickered, froze, and then played something strange. He leaned closer to the monitor. In the black and white footage of cell block C, a faint figure appeared, just for a few seconds. It looked like an old woman in a long blue scarf. She walked past the cells, slow and calm, her head slightly bowed. The inmates pressed against their bars, whispering, pointing. Then, as suddenly as she appeared, the image blinked out. The warden's hand trembled as he reached for the radio. Daniels, come to the control room. Now. In his cell, Michael sat awake, listening. He had heard the scream from earlier. He had heard the guards running. He had felt the change in the air, that same chill before a miracle or a warning. He closed his eyes and whispered, "What are you trying to show them?" A voice answered from the dark corner of the cell, not loud, not frightening, just familiar. That Mercy isn't quiet. Michael opened his eyes. She was sitting on the bed opposite him, the same old woman, the same blue scarf, but her eyes looked sadder now. People think forgiveness is soft, she said, but sometimes it shakes the earth. Michael swallowed. Why are you still here? Because your story isn't finished. And because there's still one man who must be saved. He frowned. Who? She didn't answer. Instead, she stood slowly, her form flickering between shadow and light. You'll know when the time comes. She stepped closer, the air around her smelling like rain and roses. When it does, don't hold back. Mercy isn't mercy if you choose who deserves it. Michael stared, his heart racing. Wait. Tell me who he is. but she was gone. The only thing left on the bed was the faint imprint of her hand, and a small, folded note that hadn't been there before. He picked it up. 3 words. Forgive the warden. Down in the control room, the warden and Officer Daniels watched the footage over and over. It's not possible, Daniels said under his breath. There's no way. That hallway was locked. Every guard was accounted for. The warden leaned forward. Check the timestamp. Daniels squinted at the corner of the screen. 11:03 p.m. The warden froze. That's the same time the kid in cell C started screaming. The room fell silent. The warden finally exhaled. Whatever's happening here, it's not just about Michael Carter anymore. Daniels nodded slowly. Then what's it about? The warden didn't answer. His eyes lingered on the frozen image, the woman in blue, glowing faintly even in black and white. The next morning, Michael was escorted to the warden's office. 2 guards walked beside him, tense, as if he might vanish into thin air like the others had. When the warden saw him, he dismissed the guards and motioned for Michael to sit. I don't know how to say this, the warden began, rubbing the bridge of his nose. But I've seen things these last few days that I can't explain. Michael didn't speak. He only watched him quietly, waiting. I don't know who that woman is, the warden continued. I don't know what she wants. But after the incident last night, I checked something. He pulled open a drawer and placed a file on the table. The name on it read, Nora Blake. Michael's chest tightened. I don't know where this file came from, the warden said. It wasn't here before. No one logged it. No one delivered it. But it contains an old photo, a woman in a blue scarf. The same one from the footage. He slid the photo across the table. Michael picked it up slowly. The picture was faded, but there was no mistaking her face. That's her, he whispered. The warden nodded. It's dated 1972. According to the record, Nora Blake volunteered as a nurse here. She died 48 years ago, in this same building. Michael stared at him, the color draining from his face. How? The warden sighed. There was a fire in the infirmary. She refused to leave until she helped every last prisoner out. They found her body near the locked door. She was holding a young man's hand, an inmate she'd been trying to save. Michael's eyes filled with tears. She stayed. The warden nodded. They said her last words were, "Mercy doesn't choose." Silence filled the office. Then, the warden's voice broke. I think she came back for you. But I also think she came back for me. Michael's head tilted slightly. For you? The warden looked away. Years ago, I signed off on your conviction. I was the one who denied your first appeal. Michael blinked, stunned. You were just a name on a file, the warden said, his voice thick. I didn't look deeper. I wanted to keep my job clean, efficient. I thought it was justice. But I see now it was pride. Michael didn't answer. The words from the note pulsed in his mind. Forgive the warden. The warden looked at him, eyes full of shame. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. Michael took a slow breath. The air smelled faintly of roses again. I forgive you, he said softly. The warden blinked, as if he hadn't heard right. You what? I forgive you, Michael repeated, his voice steady. Not because it's easy, but because I was told mercy isn't mercy if you choose who deserves it. The warden lowered his head. He covered his eyes with one hand. For the first time in years, he wept, quietly, deeply, like a man unburdening his soul. When he looked up again, the air in the room had changed. The sunlight through the blinds looked warmer, almost golden. Michael, he said slowly, maybe this isn't just your miracle. Maybe it's ours. That night, a storm rolled in. Rain drummed on the prison roof, thunder rattled the bars, and flashes of lightning painted the hallways white. Officer Daniels walked past Michael's cell. You good in there? He asked. Michael nodded. Better than I've ever been. Daniels smirked. You're a weird guy, you know that? Michael smiled faintly. Yeah, but I think that's okay. As Daniels turned to leave, Michael added quietly. Hey, officer. Yeah. If she comes again. Daniels frowned. What? Don't run. Daniels gave a nervous laugh. I'll try not to. He walked away shaking his head, but something deep inside told him Michael meant it. Hours later, the lights flickered. A guard shouted down the hall. Power surge. The emergency generator kicked in. Red light bathed the corridors. And then, from somewhere inside the prison, the same rose scent returned. Soft at first, then stronger. Officer Daniels froze mid-step. He turned. At the far end of the hall stood the old woman in blue. Her scarf glowed faintly in the crimson light. She lifted her hand and pointed, not at him, not at Michael's cell, at the door leading to the warden's office. Then she vanished. Daniel's heart pounded. He grabbed his radio. "Warden, you need to." Static. He ran. When he burst through the office door, the room was dark, except for a faint glow near the desk. The warden sat slumped in his chair, one hand over his heart, his face pale. On the desk lay the photo of Nora Blake, glowing softly. Daniels rushed to him. Sir, can you hear me?" The warden's eyes fluttered open. She was here," he whispered. "She said." He coughed, clutching his chest. "She said what?" Daniels pressed. The warden smiled faintly, tears streaming down his cheeks. "She said, mercy finishes what justice cannot." Then his hand fell still. The light in the photo faded. And outside, the storm finally stopped. The next morning, when Michael was told the news, he bowed his head quietly. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just whispered one line to the still air of his cell. Then maybe he's free too. But as he lifted his head again, something strange happened. The white rose on his table, the one she had left for him, had turned red overnight. And faintly, almost like a whisper carried by the wind, came her voice again. "Mercy always finds the ones who show it." Michael smiled softly. But he didn't know that beyond those prison walls, something even greater had begun. Something that would reach far beyond Maple Ridge and draw the whole world's eyes to what had happened in that cell. Because the woman in blue wasn't done yet. And her next miracle would shake not just the prison, but the country itself. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the news had already escaped the walls. Reporters crowded outside the prison gates, cameras flashing, microphones raised. "Is it true the warden died in his office?" one shouted. "What about the prisoner who saw the Virgin Mary?" another yelled. Inside, the guards tried to keep order, but even they looked uneasy. Everyone had seen too much, smelled too much, heard too much that no report could explain. Father Tom walked down the hall holding his Bible tight against his chest. He had seen death before, but never peace like the one on the warden's face. When he reached Michael's cell, the young man was sitting quietly, staring out the small barred window. The morning light fell across his face, soft and calm. "She came again, didn't she?" Father Tom asked. Michael nodded slowly. "She came for him." Father Tom swallowed. "Do you think he's at peace now?" Michael turned to him. "She said mercy finishes what justice cannot. Maybe that means he's home." The chaplain didn't reply. He sat beside the bars, silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Michael, the whole world is talking about you. Some say you saw the Virgin Mary. Some say it's a hoax. Some say you've lost your mind." Michael smiled faintly. "Let them say what they want. I know what I saw." Father Tom nodded, but he looked worried. "Faith is like that, isn't it? It makes you believe things even when the world calls you foolish." "Maybe," Michael said softly. "But sometimes, the world needs a fool to remind it what's real." Later that day, Michael was escorted to the interview room. A young reporter from a Christian network had been given permission to speak with him. She couldn't have been more than 25, nervous but determined. Her name tag read, Emily Hayes. "Mr. Carter," she said as she sat down. "Do you mind if I record this?" Michael smiled politely. "Go ahead." She pressed the red button. "You said your last request before execution was to see the Virgin Mary." "Yes." "Why her?" He thought for a moment. "Because she represents mercy. I didn't want to die angry. I wanted to see what mercy looked like, one last time." Emily's voice trembled. "And as she came?" Michael nodded. "She came." Emily blinked fast, her eyes glassy. "What did she say to you?" "She said forgiveness isn't earned, it's accepted." The reporter's hand shook as she wrote the words down. "And what did you feel?" "Peace," he said simply. "Like every wrong thing in me just melted." Emily looked up at him. "And now? What do you want?" Michael smiled, but it was sad. "To live like she taught me. To forgive like she does." He paused, then leaned forward slightly. "And to make the world remember that mercy isn't weakness, it's strength." When the interview ended, Emily sat in her car in the parking lot and cried. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because she'd come expecting to meet a criminal, and instead, she'd met faith made human. She wrote her article that night. The title read, "His last request before execution was to see the Virgin Mary, and she came." The story spread like wildfire. Within 3 days, the prison received over 10,000 letters. Some came from believers, others from skeptics, but they all said one thing: They wanted to understand Mercy. A woman from Kentucky wrote, "My husband died angry. I wish he'd heard your story." A man from Detroit said, "If she could forgive you, maybe I can forgive myself." Even children sent drawings, blue scarves, white roses, kind eyes. Michael read as many as he could. Some made him laugh. Some made him cry. All of them made him believe something bigger was happening. Father Tom visited again, smiling. "You've become a preacher without a pulpit, son." Michael chuckled. Maybe the world needed a sermon. Maybe it needed a miracle, Father Tom said. Michael looked thoughtful. But miracles don't happen to prove something. They happen to change someone. That night, something stirred again. Officer Daniels was doing his final round when the hallway lights flickered. He stopped outside Michael's cell and looked in. Michael was kneeling, his hands clasped. He wasn't praying out loud, but his lips were moving. Daniels opened his mouth to speak, but then he heard something. A woman's voice. Gentle, low, like a lullaby carried through water. He froze. It wasn't coming from Michael. It was coming from everywhere. The smell of roses filled the corridor again. "Do not be afraid," the voice whispered. Daniels backed away slowly, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The light flickered again, then steadied. The air went still. Michael opened his eyes. "You heard her too, didn't you?" Daniels swallowed hard. I don't know what I heard." Michael smiled softly. "That's enough. She only speaks to those who listen." Daniels looked shaken. "What does she want now?" Michael's gaze turned distant. "Something's coming." The next day proved him right. The governor's office called. They wanted to meet Michael personally. The case was officially closed. He was free to go. When the guards came to unlock his cell, Michael didn't move right away. He looked around the small room, the gray walls, the metal cot, the picture of the Virgin Mary taped to the wall. "She kept me company here," he said quietly. Father Tom smiled sadly. "She'll keep you company out there too." Michael nodded. "Yeah, but out there, people don't listen as easily." Father Tom placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then make them listen." That afternoon, the gates opened. For the first time in years, Michael stepped into the sunlight without chains on his wrists. The reporters shouted his name. Cameras flashed. A sea of microphones surrounded him. "Do you believe it was the Virgin Mary?" someone yelled. "Do you think it was a miracle?" Michael smiled faintly. "I don't need to believe. I know." He paused, then added softly, "And I think she didn't just come for me. She came for everyone who's forgotten what mercy feels like." The crowd fell silent. For a long moment, even the reporters didn't speak. Then someone asked, "What will you do now?" Michael looked up at the sky. "I'll go where mercy leads me." That night, in a small rented motel outside town, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the wind move through the trees. The world felt different, too loud, too bright. Freedom, after so much stillness, almost hurt. Then he heard a soft knock on the door. He opened it and froze. There she was again, the old woman in the blue scarf, standing under the flickering porch light, her eyes gentle and knowing. "You kept your heart soft," she said. Michael's throat tightened. "You came back." She smiled. "I never left." He stepped closer. "What now? What do I do?" Her answer was simple. "You do what I did. You stay until every lost soul finds its way home." And before he could speak again, the wind picked up, and she was gone. Only her scarf remained, draped across the doorway, smelling faintly of roses. Michael picked it up and held it against his chest. "Then I'll stay," he whispered, "until they all find home." Outside, the night grew still. But far away, hundreds of miles from Maple Ridge, another man lay in a hospital bed, heart monitor beeping steadily, eyes closed. And beside him, unnoticed by the nurses, a faint blue light began to glow. It started quietly, the way miracles often do. In a small hospital room in Chicago, a man named Richard Cole lay dying. Machines beeped softly beside his bed, their rhythm slowing more each hour. He was 72, a retired police detective with more regrets than memories. He had no visitors, no children, no family left to call. He had spent his life believing only what he could touch, measure, or prove. "Faith is for the weak," he used to say. "I've seen too much of the world to believe in fairy tales." But that night, when the nurses had dimmed the lights and left him alone, Richard heard something that made him sit up, a faint sound, like humming. A woman's voice. It came from the far corner of the room. "Who's there?" he croaked, his voice dry. No answer. Just the scent of roses, soft, warm, impossible. Then he saw her. A woman in a long blue scarf, standing near the window. Her eyes kind. Her presence calm. Richard froze. What do you want? The woman smiled gently. You once sent an innocent boy to prison. He blinked hard. What? Her voice stayed soft. Maple Ridge. The Quickmart case. Richard's heart skipped. I was the one who signed the arrest warrant, he whispered. The evidence was incomplete, she finished. His hand trembled. I did what the law required. Her gaze didn't waver. And now Mercy asks for more. Richard's eyes filled with tears he didn't understand. He was freed, he whispered. I heard about it on the news. I heard the stories, but I didn't believe them. The woman stepped closer, the scent of roses deepening. Then believe now. Forgive yourself before the light comes. I can't, he said, shaking his head. I don't deserve to. She reached out, placing her hand gently over his trembling one. Forgiveness isn't deserved. It's accepted. Richard's chest heaved. The monitor beeped wildly, then steadied. His breathing slowed. The weight he'd carried for decades, the guilt, the pride, the cold certainty, slipped away like mist in sunlight. When the nurses returned 10 minutes later, they found him lying peacefully, a faint smile on his lips, a white rose resting on his chest. No one knew where it came from, but the hospital smelled faintly of roses for 3 days after. News of the event spread quickly, not because the hospital reported it, but because one of the nurses, a woman named Grace, couldn't keep quiet. I saw her, she told the local paper. A woman in blue. She was real. At first, people laughed. Then another nurse spoke up. I smelled the roses too. Then another. And I heard her voice. The story made headlines again. The Virgin in Blue, another miracle linked to Michael Carter. Michael saw the news the next morning. He sat in the small cafe where he'd been working quietly under a new name. The TV above the counter played the report. Images of the hospital, the witnesses, the flowers. He smiled faintly. You're still walking, he whispered. The waitress refilled his coffee. You saying something? He shook his head. Just thinking. She grinned. You look like a man who knows secrets. Michael smiled. Not secrets, just stories. That night, as he walked home through the quiet streets, he passed a small church. Its doors were open, lights spilling onto the steps. Inside, a group of people knelt in prayer. Some were crying. Some were singing. At the front stood a priest holding a blue scarf in his hands, the same shade as the one Michael still kept folded in his jacket. Curiosity pulled him in. He sat at the back, watching. The priest spoke, his voice echoing gently. We gather not because of proof, but because of hope. Whether or not you believe, something is happening. Hearts are softening. Lives are changing. Mercy is spreading. The crowd murmured, Amen. Michael looked down at his hands. He thought of Nora, or Mary, or whoever she truly was. He thought of her words. Mercy doesn't choose. When the prayer ended, people began to leave. The priest turned and saw Michael sitting in the last pew. His eyes widened. Are you? Michael smiled softly. I am. The priest stepped forward slowly. I read about you. They said you saw her. Michael nodded. She saw me first. The priest hesitated. Then tell me, what does she want from us? Michael stood, the wooden bench creaking. She wants the same thing she asked me to do. And that is? He smiled faintly. Forgive. Everyone. No matter what. Over the next few weeks, people began visiting the prison, not to gawk, but to pray. The cell where Michael had once awaited death became a place of peace. Flowers covered the floor. A small statue of the Virgin Mary stood in the corner. Father Tom wrote a letter to Michael, telling him that even guards who once mocked faith now carried small blue ribbons in their pockets. One guard wrote, I don't go to church, but every time I smell roses, I feel like someone's watching over me. Michael read every letter. He answered some, but one morning, he received a letter with no return address. The handwriting was familiar, elegant, and careful. It read, You've done well, my child. But mercy never sleeps. There is one more who must find it. His name is Peter. Michael frowned. There was no Peter in his life, no one he could remember. He folded the letter and tucked it into his pocket. Then show me, he whispered. The answer came the next evening. He was walking home through the city when a man stepped out from an alley, rough-looking, unshaven, eyes dark with pain. Michael Carter, the man said. Michael froze. Yes. The man took a deep breath. My name's Peter Cole. Richard Cole was my father. Michael's heart skipped. The man from the hospital? Peter nodded. I heard about you. About what he saw. About her. His voice cracked. He was a hard man. Never believed in anything. But the night before he died, he called me. He said he saw her. Said he forgave me for leaving. I didn't even know what he meant until after. Michael stepped closer. You think it was her? Peter nodded again, tears welling. He died with peace on his face. And I've been trying to find you ever since. Because I don't understand how any of this is possible. Michael studied him quietly. Then he said, maybe you don't need to understand. Maybe you just need to forgive yourself. Peter looked away. You sound like him. Michael smiled faintly. Or maybe like her. The man laughed bitterly. Then tell her to stop haunting me. Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. She doesn't haunt. She heals. At that moment, a soft wind blew through the street. The faint scent of roses filled the air. Both men turned, and there she was, standing under a streetlight. The woman in blue. Her face glowed softly, calm and bright. Peter stumbled back, gasping. No, this can't be real. She's real, Michael said quietly. And she came for you. The woman smiled at Peter, her voice like a whisper carried by the night breeze. You have carried your father's anger long enough. Let it rest. Peter fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I hated him, he sobbed. I hated how cold he was. How he made me feel small. I walked away and never said goodbye. Her voice softened. And yet love has found you again. The scent of roses grew stronger. The streetlight flickered once. When Peter lifted his head, she was gone. But a single white rose lay at his feet. He picked it up slowly, staring at it through his tears. She was real. Michael nodded. Now you believe. Peter looked at him. Who are you? Michael smiled. Just someone she didn't give up on. That night, Peter followed Michael to the small church. He knelt at the altar and prayed for the first time in years. Outside, as the wind moved through the trees, the scent of roses drifted again, faint, steady, and eternal. And miles away, in another town, a little girl was crying in her sleep. Her mother had just died. She whispered, Please, God, send me someone kind. At that same moment, the air in her room filled with the soft smell of roses. And somewhere unseen, a woman in blue smiled. Her work still not done. The world had changed. It had been 3 months since Michael Carter's release, and stories of the woman in blue were appearing everywhere, from hospitals and prisons to quiet little towns no one had ever heard of. People whispered her name like a prayer. Some said she was the Virgin Mary. Some said she was an angel. Others believed she was the spirit of Nora Blake, the nurse who died saving prisoners decades ago. But to Michael, she was simply Mercy, walking in human form. And he knew she wasn't done. One cool morning, Michael woke in his small apartment above the bakery where he worked part-time. The smell of bread drifted through the air. For a moment, he thought it was the scent of roses again. He stretched, rubbed his eyes, and noticed something strange on his table. A newspaper folded perfectly in half, though he hadn't bought one. The front page read, School bus crashes in Brookfield Canyon. 17 children injured. Michael froze. A chill moved through him. Brookfield was only 2 hours away. At the bottom of the page, someone had drawn a small blue line, like a signature, soft and curved. He didn't need to guess who left it. He packed his small bag, folded the scarf she'd given him, and whispered, I'll go. The crash site was quiet when he arrived. Twisted metal. Broken glass. The air still smelled of smoke and oil. Most of the children had been rescued, but one remained in critical condition, a girl named Lily, only 7 years old. Michael stood near the ambulance, speaking softly with the nurses. Is she going to be okay? One nurse, her face streaked with soot, shook her head. We're trying, but her heart stopped twice. It's a miracle she's still here. Michael looked toward the small stretcher where the child lay, pale and still, an oxygen mask covering her tiny face. He took a slow step forward. Can I pray with her? The nurse hesitated, then nodded. If it helps. He knelt beside Lily and took her hand. It was cold, fragile. He closed his eyes. You can hear me, can't you? He whispered. Don't be afraid. Mercy is near. Then he felt it, a warmth behind him, gentle but powerful. The air shifted. The scent of roses filled the canyon. He opened his eyes. She was there, standing in the sunlight, the blue scarf fluttering in the wind, her eyes soft but full of fire. Michael's voice trembled. You came. She nodded. Because she called. Lily's small fingers twitched. The heart monitor beeped once, then again, faster, steadier. The paramedic shouted. She's stabilizing. Her pulse is back. Tears filled the nurse's eyes. Oh my God, Michael whispered, don't thank me. He looked at the woman in blue. Thank her. But when the others turned, there was no one there. Only a soft blue scarf fluttering on the edge of the canyon. That night, news of the child's recovery spread across every major network. The headlines all sounded the same. Miracle in Brookfield Canyon. Girl saved after crash. Witnesses report scent of roses. Mysterious blue scarf found. Michael watched the broadcast alone from a cafe window. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He just whispered, she's showing them again. The barista behind the counter switched off the TV. You believe in all that miracle stuff? He asked. Michael looked up. I believe mercy walks where it's needed. The barista laughed. Then maybe she'll come fix my rent. Michael chuckled softly. Maybe she already has. You're still here, aren't you? A week later, Michael received a letter with no return address, the same handwriting as before. He opened it carefully. Your part is ending, my child. But the story isn't. Mercy will keep walking. You must now rest. Go back to where it began. He folded the letter slowly. He knew exactly what that meant. Maple Ridge. The town hadn't changed much. The river still bent like an elbow. The same diner still stood on Main Street, Donnie's Diner, with its faded red booths and humming lights. Michael walked in, and the bell over the door chimed softly. The same waitress from years ago gasped. Michael Carter? Is it really you? He smiled. It's me. Lord have mercy, she whispered. You look peaceful. He laughed. Guess I had help. He sat in the same booth where he once gave Nora her blue scarf. The same sunlight hit the table. The same smell of coffee and fries filled the air. He looked out the window, remembering that day, her smile, her voice, her words. Mercy is a door that opens both ways. He whispered to the empty seat across from him. Did I do what you asked? The sunlight through the window flickered, once, twice, and then grew warmer. The air filled with the scent of roses. And there she was, sitting across from him again. Her gray coat, her crooked smile, her eyes gentle and endless. You did well, Michael, she said. You gave them hope again. He felt tears rise, but they were gentle ones, not of sorrow, but of peace. Will I see you again? She smiled. You already do. The sunlight brightened. The whole diner seemed to glow. Then everything grew quiet. When the waitress came back to check on him, Michael was sitting with his head bowed and the faintest smile on his face. A single white rose rested on the table beside his hand, and on the seat across from him lay the blue scarf, neatly folded, still warm. News spread again. Former death row inmate found peacefully dead in Maple Ridge Diner. A white rose and a blue scarf found beside him. Father Tom read the story and wept. He made it home, he whispered. And somewhere unseen, a woman in blue walked through another hospital hallway, another prison corridor, another broken home, still carrying mercy to the hearts that had forgotten it. Everywhere she went, people said the same thing afterward. We smelled roses. We saw blue light. We felt peace. And sometimes, when the world went quiet enough, you could almost hear her whisper, Mercy finishes what justice cannot.